Hey everyone, welcome to the driver breakdown show for the Enjoy Illinois 300 at Worldwide Technology Raceway, aka Gateway. You'll see me mention Gateway way more than I mention Worldwide Technology Raceway. It's always going to be Gateway to me, even though Worldwide Technology ended up buying the naming rights of the racetrack. It's always going to be Gateway. Uh, Pumped for the race this week. Obviously, last week, Chase Briscoe absolutely dominated the field. Give him a really good start to the NASCAR playoffs. There was a lot of interesting things last week in the playoff situation. Hendrick Motorsports as a whole really kind of performed terribly. Specifically, Kyle Larson, who, I mean, Darlington's notoriously one of his better racetracks. So Um, we'll see if any of those questions get answered this week. I mean, you look at it, and they definitely had some speed in practice. We do have a new tire this week. Same tire that they ran at Iowa. Brad Keselowski, Eric Jones, Kyle Larson did a tire test here in June. Pretty sure it was June or July. So they obviously got some extra laps. We saw that in practice. Keselowski was really fast. Kyle Larson was really fast. So not shocking that either one of them had speed in practice. So the playoff picture, I feel like, is very interesting heading into this weekend. I mean, Bowman is a question mark. Barry, I expected him to do a lot better than he did, but I still think it's really open heading into this week before we head to Bristol next week. So we'll see how all that kind of plays out. As far as dominators here at this racetrack in particular, um, last year was a two dominator race, even with Blaney running out of gas and not being optimal. Bell basically blowing an engine really late in that race was still optimal because Martin Truex Jr. kind of pushed him around the racetrack for the last like 8 laps. So Austin Cindric and Bell were the two main dominators last year. There were four drivers that started inside the top 10 in the optimal last year compared to 2023 when there was only two. And then 2022, there was just one driver in the top 10. So track position, very important here. Last year, we saw it throughout the race. It's going to be important again this week. And a lot of our dominators are the expensive. A lot of our potential dominators are expensive. Blaney, Hamlin, Bell, Briscoe, Byron, Larson, Reddick. What is that? 2, 4, 6, 7. The top 7 price drivers on DraftKings could all be potential dominators. And I think that there's a good chance that the dominators come from there. Maybe Ross, maybe Cindric. But I think the main dominators that I'll be focusing this week are right here, Blaney to Reddick. I think those are going to be the drivers to beat. And I would realistically, even looking at projections are kind of saying, hey, it could be any of these guys. And I don't disagree with that. But I'll tell you my favorites as we get going here. I know a lot of NFL stuff. I know a lot of people are playing NFL. I just got done building out during the Xfinity race. I got done building out my stacks that I have for my builds for NFL. So I'm excited for NFL as well. I love NFL season. It's always a lot of fun, but trust me, I still full focused on NASCAR and appreciate everyone being here. So let's jump in and talk about these drivers, starting with Ryan Blaney. Obviously, anytime that we go to a short flat, and I wouldn't even necessarily consider this a short flat track. I would consider this I'd consider it a flat track. It is an intermediate track, so it is somewhat tough to kind of classify it. just overall. But anytime we go to this type of racetrack, Blaney towards the top of the list, ranks first in speed here in the 3 races that we run here with the next gen car, averaging the second most fastest laps behind Kyle Busch, and I think the second most laps led behind Kyle Busch as well. Yeah, Kyle Busch has been really good here in the past. So Blaney, even if we look at the flat track data, he ranks really high on that. Practice wise, Ryan Blaney was really good in practice. So everything points to Ryan Blaney having a really fast car. His fall off was incredible in practice. Didn't rank like he was like fourth in 10 lap average, but first in 20 lap average. His fall off was really good. William Byron had a really good long run car in practice as well. So the fall off on those drivers were excellent. And Chase Elliott, I think, was the other one that had really good long run like speed when you took out a couple of bad laps. That was really good for them. So um yeah, I mean I like Blaney a lot. I'm gonna play a bunch of Blaney. I'm gonna play a bunch of Hamlin. I'm gonna play a bunch of Larson. Play some Briscoe, some Bell, some Byron, like and some Reddick. Like realistically, I'm going to have exposure to all of these drivers up here in this price range. I still don't know who my favorite is. Obviously, I'll have my core play article up here when I get done, but good chance that I try to get at least two of these drivers in most of my builds this week. Denny Hamlin starting on the pole. Track position matters. Denny is awesome at flat tracks. He wasn't the best car in practice. He was way down. His flags definitely were way down as well. My practice model had him way down. So it's interesting with him getting the pole on like what we want to do. We know that the JGR cars were really fast here last season. We know how good he is on flat tracks in general. So it's so hard not to have interest in Denny on the pole at a track where track position matters so much. It's just last week put a really bad taste in our mouth on Denny. I'm sure all of us feel the same way. But so I mean, I like Denny. I like his position. I think Larson was better than Denny in practice. So I think Larson's price definitely going to factor into who do I like more to be the early race dominator here. It's very close. Track history wise, they're very similar. Neither one of them have been awesome, but really like last year and the year before, Denny was really good here. Like last year, he finished second in the race. He just didn't have like race winning upside. But starting on the pole here is such an advantage, and track position matters. So hard to pass the leader here. So factoring all of that in to our builds, that first stage is so short that we're not going to have any pit stops. It's just going to kind of be running until the end of the stage, unless there's a caution, which will mix up some strategy. I like Hamlin. I think there's a chance that Hamlin leads every single lap of this first stage. Bell starting eighth. C Bell is just one of the best on flat tracks. He has been really fast. He was probably the fastest car here last year. He had 74 fastest laps and 80 laps led last year from the fourth starting position, starting eighth this year. Different tire. A lot of teams have talked about how this tire is very different than the tire they ran last year. I'm still fighting this cough, so I have to mute a lot. I'm sorry. Um, I went to the doctor this week and they told me it was allergies, like post nasal allergies. Like Yeah, we'll see if it's that or not. I've been taking medicine all week and it won't go away. So anyway, Bell starting eighth, like the upside, like the potential. This is a really good racetrack type for him. Another driver that I really liked in practice when you started looking at the lap times for him, like he's not going to pop on like 5-10 lap averages, but if you started to look into his lap times a little bit more, you're really going to like what you saw from him. The only thing is he didn't run as many laps as some of the other drivers, so that definitely has some, factor into where he was at practice wise. But I like Seabell. I like him on this racetrack type. I like his upside here starting eighth. Chase Briscoe starting third. Briscoe wasn't the best in practice. We saw this last week where he wasn't the best in practice. The short flat tracks for him this season are the flat tracks, the short flat tracks. I know I keep saying that, but the intermediate flat tracks like have been really good for him. This team is really good on this type of racetrack. We've seen a lot of improvements from Chase Briscoe as the year has gone along. The one thing that I will say about Briscoe is he really struggled at Iowa. He's starting third. There's so much downside with very little upside, in my opinion. I'll probably end up being underweight on Chase, where he's currently projected at right now. 23%. I think I end up underweight on him in that projection. I don't really have anything else to add. I think that if I play Briscoe, it'd probably be like 10% in that range. William Byron starting six. I like Byron a bunch here. He's just been consistently good on long runs on these tracks. And his practice times definitely suggested that like he was going to be really good on long runs. He won this race or not. He didn't win this race. Sorry. He won Iowa with this tire that we're running in this race, and he did it pretty much dominating that race from like I think second position. So track position mattering as good as Byron's pit crew has been this season. I like the upside for him starting sixth. Let's talk Kyle Larson starting second. I I am so hesitant. I'm not even going to lie. I'm so hesitant on Larson this week just because of the recent speed. It is very concerning the recent speed that this team has had as a whole. The one thing that think that he has going for him, he did the tire test here. They had really good pace in practice. He was really fast in practice. Some of his 10 lap averages will be a little off because he went out and ran like 7 or 8 laps, and then he came in and pitted and made some adjustments, and then went out and made another long run. So a lot of his long run speed came on tires that were older. So I really liked where he was at in practice. Starting second at this price point with his upside, projects to be very popular. I like him a lot. So weird because of the like outcomes recently. His price is so far down; it just feels too cheap for his upside. But then you look at where this team has been at and how they've been finishing, and you're like, man, how do I play this guy right now? He has not led more than 20 laps in a race since the Coke 600, where he led 34 laps. The last time he dominated a race was in May. So you expect them to, kind of get it going here and do well. He had a rough go at Iowa. Like, it's just been a rough patch for this team. We know he's capable of dominating races. The fact that he had speed in practice is a really good sign. But I don't know, at 43% projected ownership, might be a week that I like play him, but play underweight. Tyler Reddick starting 7th. I think Tyler Reddick is solid. I don't think he has as much ceiling as some of the other drivers, and it's more of I just don't think that Tyler Reddick goes out and dominates the race. So I think Tyler Reddick could run well, pick up some fastest laps, but I don't see him like necessarily dominating the race overall. So I think Tyler Reddick is an interesting tournament play in that aspect, but I also think that like his upside is not as high as others, which is a little concerning as well. He's another guy that I just don't love. Like I like Blaney, Hamlin, Bell, Briscoe, Byron, Larson just more than Reddick. So yeah. And yeah, I agree. Flames, he's like 43% is crazy. I'm going underweight. He is like I think Hamlin and Blaney and Larson are all like the favorites to win the race in the sports books too. Like there's some value in the sports books. If you're willing to take some shots on some drivers, but man, there's not a ton of value overall in the sports books this week. Um, I almost want to double down on my Bubba Wallace bet. Sorry. Anyway, moving on. Joey Logano starting 13th. Just no pace in this car right now. They said that they really are struggling with this tire. They really struggled at Iowa. They struggled for overall speed here last year. They still ended up finishing 5th, but he was like a 12th place car last year. Just I mean, they are champions. They take bad cars and finish well. I don't think he has a lot of upside for his price, so I'm probably out on Joey this week. Always painful when you fade Logano because you know the outcome is always there for them to play a strategy at some point and like lead a bunch of laps out of nowhere. But he was really struggling on the radio today. I had all scan on when the practice was going, and yeah, they weren't loving it. Chase Elliott starting 19th. Like I mentioned, Elliott had a lot of long run pace in the car. So if we do get some long runs here, I think Elliott is someone that could potentially finish inside the top 10. I don't think he has like stellar ceiling, but I think he could score 40 to 50 fantasy points here. I think the price is probably really appropriate. I don't mind him. I think he is like more of a floor type play than like a ceiling type play, but I think he's still very good and like he's still good enough that you definitely want to get some exposure. But I don't know. I see like the same similar type of upside from like a Keselowski, a Bowman, a Hochevar, a Priest, in this same type of price range. Austin Cindric starting 9th. Obviously Austin Cindric won this race last year, passing Ryan Blaney late in the race when Blaney ran out of gas. But Austin Cindric was fast all day in that race. It wasn't just like a fluke win. He had a lot of speed in that entire race. This team had really good pace in Iowa. I was expecting a little bit more practice speed from him. The speed was really off for this team, and it's kind of thrown me off a little bit with how good he was here last year and how good he was at Iowa. I really expected him to be better in practice. So Cindric threw me for a little loop in practice. He's not projecting the best. He's not projecting the worst. I think I put him in my dominator group and get a little bit of exposure to him. And if I remember correctly, it's the same thing that I said for him last year. Pretty sure at this race last year, I said get some exposure to him and in your dominator group. Bubba Wallace starting 14th. I like Bubba this week. I think that, he's probably more of a FanDuel play, even though FanDuel has just like completely killed their contests for football season starting. So I don't necessarily love that idea, but I think Bubba is someone that can finish inside the top 10. I don't think that he has like a huge ceiling, but I just really like where this team is at overall right now. They're running really well, they're finishing well on top of running well. So I like the spot for Bubba. I think he finishes top 10. Like I said, I might double down on my Bubba bet just because it's like, I think it's like plus 140 for a top 10. And I think I got it at even money earlier this week. But definitely still debating on where I want to be with Bubba. Up next, we got Josh Berry starting 12th. Berry's very good at short flat tracks. This track being a little bit longer, I still think Josh Berry is going to be really solid here. Yeah, a bad taste in our mouths. Anybody that played him last week, one of my best teams last week had Barry in it. It was a Briscoe team. It was a very good team. Had Barry not wrecked, I think I would have made good, 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 good. I would have had a good day because who knows? Like, what if Hamlin would have led a little bit more too, which would have been nice. But um, Josh Berry, I think at starting 12th is fine. It's kind of in this weird range where I don't know, do we put him in our dominator group? Do we not put him in our dominator group? I don't see a lot of dominator upside. I don't think he'll be very popular. So I just end up playing Barry, hoping for a top 10 and maybe like 15, 20 fastest laps. Kyle Busch starting 22nd. Typically, Kyle performs really well here, and projections still have Kyle finishing pretty well here. The one thing that I will say, Kyle talked about it in the broadcast. He is running a setup that Austin Dillon was kind of running, and he hated the setup. So I'm very concerned about where I even want to be on him. So my original thought was to be underweight on Kyle, but I did not expect him to be projected low ownership. Might just kind of match the field and like play like 10%, 15% in that range. I don't know. They were awful. RCR was awful in practice. I was hoping for a lot more from them. I think they really missed it on the setups of this car, and um, yeah, I mean, could Kyle be better in the race? Sure. It just again where RCR was at in practice. I find it really hard for them to be better than where they were at. It's so hard to make this much of adjustments. I think if anything, like if we got news that he was going to the rear and making unapproved adjustments, I think that could potentially benefit Kyle more than hurt him, even with track position being such a huge thing. I think if they could make some like wholesale adjustments to this car, it could potentially be better. I think that's kind of it. Ross Chastain starting 4th. So he doesn't project well. This hasn't been his best track. He really struggled in practice. Item is have him way down on the practice charts. So just nothing really making me interested in playing Ross outside of the fact that like he's just one of the best at restarts, and if he can kind of hold his position throughout this race, could he benefit from that? But he was like 16th in my practice model. He was way down. It's just it's a really good He's such a good restarter. And at a track where track position matters so much, it's just those are the types of plays that are so interesting if he could just kind of hold it. So I might end up playing a little bit of Chastain. I don't think I will play a lot of Chastain, but I think I would be really mad at myself if I didn't play him and he ran really well. Brad K. I mean, Keselowski did the test here. I expected him to be really solid coming into the weekend. They had a lot of pace in practice, which again is not that shocking to me. Because when you give a guy like Brad Keselowski time at a racetrack, I feel like he's going to make they're going to make really good like gains at a track and do well. I will say like last year's race here, they had speed. He finished third in the race. They called a really good race. He was really solid. I think I go back to the well on Brad K, starting 23rd. Again, like practice wise, I thought he was really good. He was way up in my practice model. I think he was like first or second, right? Oh, he was first. So yeah, I mean, hard to argue how fast he was in practice. Yeah, I mean, just he didn't run as many laps, so that definitely could boost him up a little bit practice model wise. But he had a lot of pace and he didn't have really any fall off compared to others. And the tire test definitely helps a guy like Brad King. Chris Buescher starting 11th. One of my least favorite plays this week. I mean, I like Chris Buescher as a whole. I like RFK as a whole. I really don't like where they were at. Buescher was at in practice. They were really down. And I mean, he did really well in qualifying to qualify 11th. And I just think his race pace is not anywhere near this. So I had him pretty far down. I'm wondering if this is one of the cars that might be testing something for RFK this week. Maybe Brad is on the test, like where they were at. I was thinking like this could be one of those spots where like Brad, not necessarily testing, but more because he did the test here, they have a setup that they really liked. So I don't really love Buescher. Alex Bowman starting 25th. You know, heading into the weekend, I really had a lot of interest in Bowman. Talked about it on Running Hot this week. I like this spot for him. He was really close to being like a top 10 car in practice. I think my practice model had him like 10th or 11th. He was right there. They obviously have a lot to do with gaining some track position here, but if he has top 10 speed and his fall off was as good as it was kind of showing in the lap by lap data, then he should be fine starting 25th. So I think Bowman could gain 10 to 15 spots here. Really like his price point. His range is really good. Hochevar, Priest, very good. Ty Gibbs. So this range is really good. This is going to be a range that I end up playing a lot of this week. Definitely interested in playing Alex Bowman. All right, up next we got Austin Dillon starting 15th. Again, RCR kind of missed. I think he kind of took advantage of being in that second group in qualifying, but this was one of, if not the slowest car in practice. I think it was him, like Haley, Ty Dillon, like they were just really, really off. Austin Dillon's team was really, really off. They were not able to find any kind of speed. Like they didn't have any speed. They were almost a full second off of one lap pace that other teams had put down, and their lap average was awful. It was really bad. Like looking at it, it was almost, gosh, it was 5/10 slower on average than like the next person. Like really bad. I can't do it. I just don't see any upside here, Austin Dillon. rooting for him as a fan, but not going to play him in DFS. Carson Hocevar starting 27th. I like this a lot. He's really good at restarts. He's really aggressive, and that's what we need for track position type races. So starting 27th, I think that Carson Hocevar has a lot of upside. I like him a bunch. I also really like Ryan Preece starting 32nd. Preece did not have fire off speed like some other teams, but he was one of the better cars on a long run. He really didn't have a ton of fall off. They made great pace on a long run. Again, his fall off was just so good. Like it wasn't the best fall off, but man, his fall off was if it was very close to the best. So like his 10 lap average, he was 24th, and his 30 lap average, he was 4th. Better than like a Ty Gibbs on a long run. Who else? Ross Chastain. So I think Priest might be somebody that just kind of hopefully maintains his track position early in runs and then just kind of runs better than everybody on long runs. So really like Ryan Priest. His fall off was incredibly good. Ty Gibbs starting 21st. Gosh, this guy is so tilting every week. I expect him to do better than he does. Practice wise, he had good pace in practice. His fall off wasn't as good as some others, but they had a lot of raw speed in the car. Way better than starting 21st. I like Ty Gibbs. I definitely will play him. I'll probably end up being a little underweight on him compared to like where his projected ownership is. I think that like realistically, I think that Priest gets closer to 30 to 35%, and Ty gets closer to like 20. So if he ends up being like 20%, I'll probably end up playing more of him. I think Priest is the chalky play in this range right here. These three drivers, Hocevar, Priest, Gibbs. I think Priest ends up being the high owned driver in this range. I think Carson Hocevar ends up higher owned than Ty Gibbs as well, for what it's worth. Eric Jones starting 16th. Again, got to do the tire test. Legacy making a lot of gains here towards the end of the season, which is great. He's just so good at Darlington. Like he was at what we were kind of expecting like Larson to be. Larson's just usually just so good there. And he was just so good. So good for him. I mean, you look at his history here, it's not as good. He does have a top 10 finish here. Last year, he finished 26th in this race, was like a 25th place car most of the race. Speed wise, it hasn't been great. The first year that we came here, I think he was okay. But the last 2 years, he hasn't been awesome. We look at just the flat track data. He's really like an 18th to 19th, 20th place car. Just don't see a lot of upside here. Even in practice, I didn't see a lot of upside for Jones. So I'm out on EJ this week. John Hunter is starting 20th. He's been awesome recently. I'm a little bit more interested in playing John Hunter than I am Eric Jones. But realistically, I probably won't end up playing a lot of John Hunter just because I think that like this range right above him is so good. And then I have a lot of interest in like McDowell and Stenhouse towards the bottom here. So I'll end up probably playing more of them than I will of John Hunter, just starting position and price. Justin Haley starting 31st. Yeah, he was someone that like coming into the weekend. I was like really interested on where he was going to qualify because he has an average finish of 13th here. He's finished inside the top 20 all three races here, 2 top 15s. It's just been a really good track for Justin Haley. He finished 9th here last year, but was like an 18th place car when he finished 9th. So it wasn't necessarily just speed. But man, the finishes do not line up with the speed, and the practice speeds were awful on Justin Haley. He's done well with slower cars in the past here and finished well. with the shorter first stage, you think that there's a good chance that some of these like borderline drivers could potentially stay on the lead lap. Um, Slight interest in Haley just because he's starting 31st. He's cheap enough that I could take some shots. Daniel Suarez starting 26. I'm interested in playing some Suarez this week, starting 26. Still, I mean, obviously not the focus of this team by any means. It's Chastain, it's SVG, but he's kind of racing for auditioning for a job next year too. So I feel like Daniel Suarez wants to put some good races together here down the stretch. Practice wise, he was fine. He was a top 20 car in practice. So I think with like a top 20 car type of car in practice at this price point, at this ownership, I don't think he'll be very popular. 10 to 15% owned. I think that's Suarez a good tournament play to make your lineup builds a little bit more different. AJ Allmendinger starting 17th. Great run for him last week. I like seeing AJ run well. I think it's always good for the sport when AJ is running well. I think he's really solid. He's finished top 15 here in 2 of the 3 races that we've been here. Both races that he's run here, he's finished well. There's another driver that was really struggling in practice. I could see him maybe running a little bit better than where he practiced, but even if we like start digging into the data a little bit, I mean, he was really solid at Iowa. So maybe this tire is something that's good for him. I don't think he'll be very popular if you want to take some shots on him. I will say I do prefer Suarez and McDowell over AJ. McDowell starting 28th. I really like him. I think it'd be really interesting to see where he comes in at ownership wise. I think that this is probably really close. I like him a lot. I mean, I think end up being one of the drivers I end up tagging for value play this week. Really liked his practice pace. I thought it was really good. Um, I mean, realistically, like when you're looking at some of McDowell's lap times, like he had top 10 lap times. My practice model, I think, had him 12th overall. So I really liked where he was at. I think that he has so much upside at this price point, starting 28th. So I want to play a bunch of him. I'm not playing SVG. He really struggled in practice again. This team is just kind of hoping that some playoff drivers have some issues and he can get by, but I do not think he has top 20 speed. I think that he could potentially be okay on long runs because he's shown in the past that he's good at maintaining his stuff. I'm not playing him. I think Zane is a really interesting tournament play because, I mean, coming into the weekend, Zane was someone that was on my radar already. I don't think a lot of people are going to play Zane. I think that he has a ton of downside with very little upside. So if you do want to play a little bit of him, I don't think it's crazy to take some shots on him. Todd Gillen, I always like Todd on flat tracks. He practiced pretty well. I think this is a spot you could definitely play some Gillen as a salary saver. Looking back at like past optimals here, you haven't really needed a ton of like punt type value type plays. Like last year's optimal had Hochevar, who was pretty cheap. Todd Gillen was optimal here in 2023. He was pretty cheap. So some of the cheap drivers have definitely been optimal. It's just we really haven't seen a ton of like 2 punt type players win. I think with how potentially the fastest laps and lap sled could get spread out here a little bit, I think that you could definitely take some shots on playing Gillen. I think Gillen and Stenhouse are probably my 2 favorite like cheaper plays. I don't mind Noah. This isn't the type of track that I typically like to play Noah on. He didn't really show a ton of speed in practice, so I'm not overly concerned about playing Noah. Stenhouse starting 34th, I think is solid. If he can stay on the lead lap in this first run here, I think he could pay off his price tag. He was another driver that had okay speed in practice. I wouldn't necessarily say he was amazing, but I think he had top 25 speed in practice. So I think that's good enough for me to be interested in playing him. So I mean, Stenhouse, I think, is fine here starting 34th. Cole Custer, it's just there's not really weak plays overall. Custer's fine starting 29th. He was another driver that really didn't practice too great. They made a big announcement this week that they're going to Chevy next year. So how much Ford support is he really getting here down the stretch? I feel like he's going to be locked out of some Ford meetings, and some Ford data won't be as much of available to Custer. You typically see this when they're going to different manufacturers because, I mean, would you want them to know secrets or something you're hitting on? Like RFK hits on this testing, they're not running to tell the Haas factory team. Ty Dillon is a punt. Riley Herbst is a punt. I prefer both of them over Cody Ware punt. Cody Ware has not performed well here. He was slow. Ty Dillon was really slow in practice, which was a little concerning. Herbst out of these guys had the best practice speed. So, I mean, Herbst was better than Custer, Dillon, Ware. So, I think if you're going to punt, Herbst would be my favorite, full on punt. I'll probably have a little bit of Ty Dillon too. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I don't think I'll use a ton of punts. I don't think you will need a ton of punts this week. I think you could play 2 dominator or 3 dominator teams without punts for the most part. Let's see. See what lineup HQ gives us with 100 teams on the punts. Maybe I'm off on the punts, but I just don't see us needing the punts a lot with the pricing. So looking at it, Stenhouse is getting a lot of ownership. Gillen's getting pretty good ownership, but we're not seeing the punts get a lot of ownership, which doesn't really shock me. So, yeah. Any questions in Discord? If not, I'm going to get out of here. I'll be around for a while. I'll be around for a while. Working on, obviously, I got the article rankings, and there are a few bets that I was looking at of when I got distracted when I pulled up the odds for outrights. All right, no questions. I'll be around. Like I said, if anybody has any questions, feel free to hit me up on Discord. If not, I will be around tomorrow, basically all day watching football and NASCAR. So, any questions, feel free to hit me up. Have a good week 1, and hope you enjoy this race. We got a Saturday night race next week at Bristol. Should be fun. Last race of this round already. It feels like playoffs are going quick. So, appreciate everyone for hanging out, and I will see you all again next week.